Isamu Noguchi is an American sculptor. He was born in 1904 in Los Angeles, but spent many of his formative years in elementary school in Japan, and then came back for high school, and then spent most of his life working here between New York, Italy, and Japan. Noguchi worked in 8 different decades, beginning in the 20s all the way through the 80s. In every decade he worked in, he managed to stay contemporary. Also because he didn't recognize any distinctions between art and design and high and low, and he really covered the bases. That's really an incredible thing. So that's made him kind of timeless. This incredible building we're standing in is still the only museum in the United States founded by an artist specifically to show his own work. He had a small studio across the street from the building we're standing in now for about 10 years. This was a derelict factory. It sat across the street from him. It was basically a junkyard. It was run down. He finally was able to save up enough money to buy this building and turned it into a kind of all-purpose storage house. He would plan exhibitions here. The galleries on the first floor at the museum are largely as Noguchi left them. We're also looking at an incredible selection of work from across 30 or 40 years worth of work. The piece right behind me is called To Bring to Life. It's kind of a process collaboration between nature, Noguchi, and the stonemasons who were splitting this column up when he found it. They were going to use it in a stone wall, and we're splitting it in the traditional Japanese way using bamboo wedges, wetted bamboo wedges. Noguchi fell in love with it. You can see he re-erected it and then made a few small interventions, but basically it's about showing the relationship between the hand of nature, the hand of the artist. When Noguchi bought this factory to turn it into a museum, what we see now as a sculpture garden was a wasteland. It was a junkyard. It was full of rusted hunks of metal and trash and garbage, and there wasn't a living thing in it. But he envisioned what we're now standing in the middle of. And he thought of this garden as a kind of an index or a guide to his other gardens. A fountain is not a traditional Japanese idea. In Japanese gardens, you have tsukubai, which are basins, and those basins are filled from some exterior sort, usually runnels of bamboo that gather rainwater. But this is a circulating fountain, so it is bringing a little bit of modern technology to a traditional Japanese form, which is very Noguchi, of course. But my favorite thing about the piece is the way it essentializes Noguchi's thinking about his relationship to time and to nature. If you think about it, at any given moment, stone is the sculptor and water is the material. But over the course of time, water is the sculptor and stone is the material. We're standing in a little exhibition called Patentholder. Isamu Noguchi Patentholder Designing the World of Tomorrow, which is design work of Noguchi's between about 1932 and 1939, so leading up to the first of the New York World's Fairs. And we organized it in celebration of the 2 Queen's World's Fairs, which this year are celebrating their 75th and 50th anniversaries. And Noguchi did make work for the 1939 World's Fair. You'll see there is a fountain, a photograph of a fountain that he designed for the Ford Motor Company's pavilion, which celebrated Ford's V8. You'll see there's an engine block at the top, and then a transaxle and a wheel and a hub, and it was a working fountain with water and everything. It was, I think, more than 20 feet tall, so an enormous piece of work. Every American wanted to be an industrialist and an inventor and to hold patents. And by the end of his life, Noguchi held 13 American patents and more than that in Japan. The objects are so invested with so much love for the world. He was full of social purpose and social ambition. You can never look too closely at a Noguchi because the details really matter, and the physical presence of the objects really matter. Their materiality matters. A Noguchi gives back as much as you put into it. As close as you get to it and as finely as you interrogate it, it stands up to that.